So we want to look at how to develop a research proposal. Okay, how to develop a research proposal. By the time we finish this, you would have understood some key aspects of writing a proposal. I want to believe that some of you may have even written your proposal, but by the time we finish, you will know the real content of the proposal. Now, the proposal will usually make up the chapter 1 of your dissertation by adjusting some few things. Your goal is to learn how to write a proposal. That's the first thing. Second, you're going to look at the components of the proposal and then how to conclude your research study and write an abstract. So if you are taking notes, I want you to please take the following notes. 1, components of a proposal. Components of a proposal. 2, conclusion of a research. And then writing an abstract. That's what you see on your screen now. Components of a proposal, conclusion of a research, and then writing an abstract. The conclusion of the research leads to the abstract of the paper. So the proposal is like the beginning, the conclusion is like the end, the abstract is the beginning of the end. It's a beautiful thing. That's the essence of our presence for today. So let's begin. What goes into the proposal? You may get a lot of information from Professor Boate's book, Research Made Easy. What goes into the proposal? What are the elements? What are the components of a proposal? What is a proposal? What is a proposal? Everyone who undertakes a research will eventually write a proposal and do a research work. It's an academic contract. It's not a legal contract, but it's an academic contract, where you said that you're going to work with a supervisor, where you have detailed exactly something you want to study. And you have indicated that this is how you are going to do the study. It's not a work of the supervisor. It is your work. You own it, and it's just yours. It's your name that comes on it. And you have detailed a plan on how you are going to execute this action. Now, your supervisor now comes, and then you introduce this proposal to the supervisor, and he signs a contract, approves it, agrees, in their opinion, to the best of their knowledge, that the topic you selected, it is doable, reasonable, acceptable, and it's possible that you will be able to achieve the anticipated result. Then, by him endorsing it, that gives you the go-ahead. And you can now swim in lexical gymnastics as far as this is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the first aspect of a proposal. A proposal is not a fixed blueprint. No, it's not. Now, when we say a blueprint is like something that you look at to be able to achieve a certain end. Okay, so you can have a blueprint of a building, you can have a blueprint of a human body, you can have a skeleton of a human body. And therefore, the proposal is like a manuscript that you're writing. Okay, and you as a researcher, you are expected most likely to discover something that were not there before the proposal, but which need to be incorporated in the research. But here's the point: the minimum core intellectual contribution of the research is set within the academic contract. You may change it slightly along the way. However, the fundamental still remains, because that is what was agreed between you and your supervisor. Okay, so what is the outline of the proposal? What are the things that go into the proposal that eventually make the human being of the proposal? The first thing you need to notice is that the proposal will eventually become your chapter 1 of your entire thesis or your dissertation. When it becomes that, some few things will change. For example, you had indicated earlier on the step-by-step schedule that you will have. In 2 months, I'll complete this. In 3 months, I'll complete that. In 4 months, I'll complete that. But when it comes to the chapter 1, all those things will be removed because by then you have already achieved those aspects. Other than that, the proposal becomes the chapter 1 of your research. What goes into it? Well, I want you to take a screenshot if you don't have this, and I want to believe that you already have it. But if you don't, I'll give it to you. But before then, I want you to take a screenshot of this so that you follow me, because that is the essence of our presence today at work. The first thing in your proposal will indicate your background. Now, you can say that the whole of the background, the problem, and the purpose make up the introduction, or you can single them out. So let's single them out. 1, the background. We will look at what goes into the background, then the problem statement. Then within that, we encircle the purpose of your research. We delineate the objectives from which we come out with the questions. We will give a proposed, clear-cut contribution of the work, which we sometimes call the significance of the study. We will now give a proposed methodology and a proposed literature review. We will itemize the limitations and delimitations or the scope of the study. We will give a timeline of the study, which is the schedule, and then the outline or the structure of the entire thesis. After that, you will include your references and appendices. Let's look into detail this. So first, the background. What is the background? What goes into the background? What is the input of the background? The background introduces your issue that you want to bring across. Okay. It tells you the current discourse that is happening. If it is corporate social responsibility that is happening now, the current discourse, the trends that is happening, the patterns, the views concerning social phenomena. Okay, because you want the reader to know what is happening before you pose a question. Eventually, you'll come out with a research question that will be precisely, explicitly stated, but it is implied in an argument. Okay. Now, within the introduction, you want to bring something like an industry statistic, a company statistics, a real-world statistics, perspectives of people, authorities of the phenomenon and the study. Okay. You want to highlight questions that are being asked by researchers, by practitioners, by government, by policymakers, in the press, things that are of pressing concern to the world. If it is COVID, you want to really give some statistics of how the COVID happened, how things have been engineered. If it is an industry, you want to let the reader know what is happening to that particular industry. If it is a trend, you want to. So this is why you bring a couple of statistics to show trends and patterns of how things are happening. You want the reader to know that particular environment, that phenomena I want to look at. It's a sample, just a sample. In today's data-driven environment, business analytics has emerged as a powerful tool for transforming data into actionable insight. Now, the most important thing you want to be seen doing in your introduction, in your background, is citing. I would say your first sentence has to be cited. Second sentence has to be cited. Third sentence has to be cited. Fourth sentence has to be cited. Fifth sentence has to be cited. Be so used to citing that your supervisor will now tell you that it is enough. Now, it involves the use of statistical, that is business analytics, statistical methods, predictive modeling, machine learning, and data visualization techniques to support strategic and operational decision making. Cited. Two-cited. In fact, sometimes you need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cited, boom, into one, to let the reader know that you are well read with what you are saying. Your first 5 sentences, if each one of them are not cited, you are looking for trouble. And you don't want to have trouble from the beginning. So you want the reader to know that you are a masterpiece of work. And don't be citing the same person all the time. Now, in the banking industry, where data is generated in a massive volumes, from customer transactions to loan portfolios, business analytics plays a crucial role in improving efficiency, managing risks, enhancing customer service. Cited. In-text citation should be your friend. Some people think that when you are not citing, it shows that you are copying or paraphrasing from other people. Whether you copy or paraphrase or do anything, even try and put it in your own words, you still have to cite. Continue. In the developed economies, business analytics has been widely adopted across banking operations like fraud detection, credit scoring, customer segmentation, marketing optimization, operational forecasting. Cited. That is in developed countries. Banks leverage customer data to personalize services, predict cancellation or churn, improve compliance. Okay, I would have said that even in days, you could give a citation for each one. Okay, personalized services, cited, predict churn, cited, improve compliance, cited, reduce non-performing loans, cited. This has led to significant competitive advantages, including improved profitability, customer satisfaction, and risk mitigation, cited. So that is in developed countries. However, now, developing countries, the integration of business analytics into the banking sector is still at a relatively nascent stage. While some commercial banks and fintech institutions are making strides toward digital transformation, the systematic use of business analytics for strategic decisions is often hindered. It's hindered by challenges like limited infrastructure, skill gaps, regulatory concerns, inconsistent data quality. You could do citation of each one of it. Still, you are in the background stage. Moreover, traditional banking models in many developing countries have come to fully adopt the potential of big data analytics. So you give the first thing, you talk about what is happening in developed economies. Now you come to what is happening in developing economies. Now you are zeroing down to your focus. In countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and other sub-Saharan African countries, the banking industry is facing increased pressure to modernize amidst rising competition from digitally banks and mobile money platforms. Cited, it would be nice to cite this. Customers demand faster, more personalized, and more reliable banking services. Cited, regulatory bodies are pushing for transparency and risk control. Cited, in this context, business analytics offers a pathway for traditional banks to remain competitive, improve decision making, and deliver, blah, blah. Cited. Even if it's yours, prove how intellectually inclined you are at this beginning stage. That's the background. You see, you can continue. Towards the end of the background, there's something you need to have. And this is a key. Now, in case you want to go back here to give you the point I want to say, research problem, and finally the purpose of your study. Now, let's go. Despite the opportunities, this is the research problem you're coming to bring up. Despite the opportunities, there remains a need to clearly understand how business analytics is being adopted and used within the banking sectors of developing economies. So you are throwing in a gap that you think that needs to be filled. What is that gap? They need to understand clearly how BA is being adopted within these developing. Question remains regarding the following, and these questions are gaps. The extent of analytics adoption, the strategic intent behind its use, the barriers preventing effective implementation, and the outcomes that result from integrating analytics to banking decisions. Gaps, 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 gaps. These are the same research problem, statement of problem, research problem, problem statement, same thing. Now we come to the purpose. Purpose. This research seeks to explore the role of business analytics in improving operational and strategic outcomes within specific bankings in a selected developing economy. Boom, Ghana, or whatever you want to say. Background. Problem statement. Purpose. Integrated. Done. So when you go back here, this first intro part of this proposal is sorted. So that is how you introduce your work. So I want you to get the essence of what goes into that. You need to be able to look at a whole thing, a whole paper of someone, and be able to say, oh, this is the background. Oh, this is the problem he's talking about. Oh, this is the purpose of the work. So that's a background. There's another background, okay, that you can look at later when you get the document. I don't want to go too much into this. It has to do with social media. And again, the same principle was shown there. Let's dig a little bit into this problem. A situation is in need of a solution. That is a research problem. A situation is in need of an improvement. That is a research problem. A situation, a discrepancy between the ways things are and the way they ought to be needs to be addressed. That's a research gap. That's a research problem. It is characterized by reviewing what previous research have done, what has been done, what seems to be missing, and why it's important to address that gap. That's a research problem. If you don't let the reader know why it's important to address the gap, you have not indicated the research problem. The research problem is not all about what a company problem it is undergoing. No. It could be within the literature, something that is missing. Something that is missing. And through your interaction with your supervisor, you will get to know that's something that is missing. Let's look at a sample of a research problem within the sentence. Numerous empirical studies in developed economies have demonstrated the transformative impact of analytics in the banking sector. Now, watch that word. It needs to be cited because of the word numerous. Numerous empirical studies. You have to give at least 5 citations to that statement. For instance, research in the United States and part of Europe has shown how predictive analytics and machine learning are being used to reduce loan defaults. Research in the US have demonstrated that how machine learning is being used to identify cross-selling opportunities, personalized customer management, and optimize branch performance. A couple of those researchers have been thrown here. Banks in these regions benefit from advanced digital infrastructure, skilled human capital, supportive regulatory frameworks that foster innovation and data-driven strategies. It needs to be cited, actually. In such environments, business analytics is not merely support tool, it's deeply integrated in core banking processes and decision making. It doesn't need to be cited, that sentence. However, now comes a problem. In contrast, banks in developed, because the first one was developed, now we are coming to developing. Banks in developing countries, including Sub-Saharan Africa, face significant constraints in adopting the fully leveraging business analytics. That's a gap. Studies from countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya suggest that while data is increasingly being collected, is often underutilized due to challenges like poor data quality, limited technical capacity, high implementation costs, and organizational resistance to change. Multiple citations are needed at this stage. Furthermore, now I'll come back to this point of how this person is trying to write, the problem. Furthermore, empirical evidence on how BA contributes, but business analytics contributes to customer retention, service innovation, or credit risk management. Empirical evidence on how this happened in these contexts remains scarce and fragmented. That word remains scarce and fragmented is a gap that has to be filled. Many banks continue, and he's explaining why. Many banks continue to rely on old-fashioned intuition-based approaches to decision-making, which may not be sufficient in a highly competitive environment in a digitally evolving financial ecosystem. Now, that creates a widening gap between the potential of data-driven insight and their practical application in developing country systems of banks. Now, even though there are gaps in this work, in this green highlighted section, it is prudent to always write your gaps in numbers. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. What I mean is that in writing your gaps, One of the specific things that you can do, okay, whenever you're writing your gaps is to be able to always fish out clearly your work by using linkers. By linkers, what I mean is that you can say that of the many gaps that have been identified in the extant literature, the following are worth noting. Of the many gaps, I mean, you can go straight to the point when you go to the problem statement. You have a heading called problem statement, which is called research problem. Straight on, you start. Of the many gaps that have been identified in the extant literature, the following are worth noting. First, to the best of our knowledge. Second, third, fourth, fifth, lastly, or finally. When you put your gaps in this format, it clearly, without an iota of discouragement to the reader, you clearly delineate and specify clearly to the reader what specific gaps you want to address and how those gaps have been separated from the other gaps in the work by using linkers like first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So after talking about the gaps in the green, he continues by saying that despite ongoing investment in digital transformation, okay, in the financial inclusion initiative, the strategic use of business analytics remain underexplored in many developing economies. There is a pressing need. Now he's talking about why it's necessary to undertake the work. After that, you now come again with your purpose, which is not objective, it's a purpose. So this study seeks to, is the same as saying that the purpose of this study is to bridge the gap. That's the same thing. So sometimes if you don't want to say this study seeks to, you can simply let the reader know that you are actually about to state the purpose. And therefore you say that the purpose of this study is to bridge the gap by investigating how business analytics is being applied in the banking sector of a developing economy, using Ghana as a case study. It aims, which is the same as the purpose, the aim. It aims to explore the tools, the strategies in use, challenges banks face in implementing analytics-driven solutions, and measurable impact, if any, on customer experience and institutional performance. Now, by contrasting global best practices with local realities, this study contributes to the growing discourse on the digital transformation, data-driven banking in emerging economy. So this is all part of the introduction or background introduction to the work that you have done. Within that, you have the background, you have a research problem, you have a purpose or the aim of the study. Now, this is another one, okay, that you can look at in your spare time. Towards the end, it says that, you can see it at the bottom, this study seeks to, the same thing. Instead of saying this study seeks to, you can say that the purpose of this study is to explore the perceived risks and benefits of social media among public servants from Mexico, and especially the strategic elements to include social media in e-government policy and as a communication channel with citizens. Again, it's a different thing. What's the first lesson here? Fill your statement with references. What's the second point here? Clearly look through that you have pulled the background clearly, that you have shown clearly the problem. Use even linkers to itemize the problem. Don't use numbers, don't use bullets, but use linkers as part of your paragraphing to bring that point. So let's look at the purpose again. We've looked at the problem, but let's look at the purpose, because the purpose is part of the problem towards the end of the problem. The purpose, clear statement of the specific aim and goal of the study. Okay, the variables of the population that are studied. Now, the one that I gave you, there was not much information there. So sometimes, let's go back to the one I gave you. Okay. This study seeks to bridge the gap by investigating how business analytics is being applied in the banking sector of a developing country like Ghana, over the period of 2000 to 2024 using a sample of blah, 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 blah. Now, if you know that, you do that. If you know your time period and your sample and your country and your continent, you say that. The sample, the country, the period, the continent. The sample, the country, the period, the continent. You indicate that. That's a precise. So if you look at this topic, you're leveraging business analytics to enhance decision-making and customer experience in the banking sector, study of banks in the developing economy. This was the title of the paper. Now it says that it aims to explore the tools and strategies in use. Now, sometimes, like I told you, make it clear that you are talking about the purpose. So the purpose of this study is to explore the tools and strategies in use, the challenges banks face in implementing analytics-driven decisions or solutions, and the measurable impact, if any, on customer experience and institutional performance. And of course, if you want to be precise and concise, you can add the company, the period, the sample, the country. Okay. And then the second one, which has to do with the social network marketing, social networking in Mexico, you can also see that it has a clear, precise, and concise statement of the goal of the study. From the research problem and the research purpose or the goal or the aim, you can now come out with your objective. Now, research problem is typically a general overview of the problem with just information. You're having information about the scope, information about the purpose of the study to provide an initial understanding of the research. But objective is not like that. You see, the objective is more specific. It's more specific. There's no limit to the number of references. Somebody has asked me that what is the number of references to be cited in a single? There is no number of references to be cited in a single paragraph. There's no demarcation. Just be used to putting in as many references as you can. Your supervisor will tell you if that is too much. See, it is always easy to break than to build. I want to repeat that. It's easy to break than to build. It's difficult to build something, but it's easy to break down what you have built. So it is difficult to add to the references, to add references or in-text citations to your work. Suppose you do it and you are putting only 2, and the supervisor says, no, put in 15. Ouch, it's going to be ouch. Why? That's too much. But suppose you've done 15, and he says, I'll bring it down to 5. There's no problem. It's easy to do that. You can still rewrite your point and still remove some references. So at this beginning stage, I'm not going to tell you that you should do small. I'm going to tell you to do big so that you can reduce it. It's easy to reduce than to add. That's the answer to that one. Let's go back to objectives. Your objective has to be clear. You see, one of the important things of research is that your objective, if possible, number 8. If possible, number 8 or number 8. It's not even about if possible. Because once this is specific, it's focused. Okay. You want to communicate in greater detail to this thing about the study. So you got to be specific with the objective. And you see that as we go, how specific you have to be. Without numbering the objective, it doesn't fit as an objective. Let's go back to the topic on leveraging business analytics to enhance decision-making and customer experience. After stating the aim of the study, after stating the purpose of the study, after stating the goal of the study, you have to now come to the objectives of the study. An objective must always start with 2, and then a verb will follow. Objective must always start with 2, and a verb will follow. So you always have to begin with to assess the extent to which business analytics is adopted and used in the banking sector of Ghana. Be specific. And once you say to assess, at the back of your mind, you want to have what tool are you going to use to do that assessment? It should be at the back of it. But you don't need to mention the tool in here to assess the extent to which business analytics is adopted and used in the banking sector of Ghana using predictive analytics, using machine learning. No, you don't need to add those ones. Leave those ones for now. Focus on the focus. Number 2, to examine the key drivers and barriers influencing the implementation of business analytics in Ghana. Now, imagine the second one had come first. That would not be correct. Why? Because first, you need to assess the extent to which the thing is being adopted before you look at the drivers of those adoption. So some of them have to, for example, if you're assessing the performance of banks, you cannot look at the factors driving the performance of banks when you have not assessed the performance of banks. So your first goal will be to estimate it or measure the performance of banks, assess it first. And second, look at the driving factors. The factors that are pushing the performance. The next is to evaluate the effect of business analytics on decision making, because now you have assessed the extent to which is being adopted. You have looked at the key drivers and barriers influencing the adoption, and now you want to look at the effect of the business analytics in decision making. And finally, you have the fourth one, to compare business. You see, comparison is easy to do when you know clearly the extent of the thing. Because compare the business analytics practices in Ghana with global practice, with global best practices in developing countries. Those are what we mean by objectives. Objective has to be precise and concise. On the second topic, which was on social networking in the public sector of Mexico, the objectives were also clear. Okay. Now, even though this person is using a lot of to explore, it's deliberately done to let you know that you shouldn't always use the same word, but they are always synonyms, to explore the potential benefits of social media in government, to investigate the main risks of using social media in government, okay, to determine the strategic guidelines required to take advantage of social media in government. So you vary your words, Don't be tautological. Try as much as possible to incite the reader to want to read more. But again, try and be systematic, try and be ordering, try and be descending in your steps. Don't bring the first one and go to the third one before you bring the second one. Be clear. Organization of your objectives are very, very important. Now, once you have worked on your objective, you need your questions. The interrogative statement that will focus on what variables and concepts are to be described and what relationships might exist between them. It is a question, and it must all have a question mark. What you ask, how you ask, where you look at, critical. What you find out, even critical. So let's go back to the leveraging business analytics topic there. You remember the objectives? We stated them. Now you can see that the number of objectives here match the number of research questions. Now, the number of objectives must always be at least equal to the number of research questions. I want to repeat that, so please take note. These are examinable questions. The number of objectives, you cannot have 4 objectives and 3 research questions. It's impossible, it's inquiable. But you can have 4 research questions and 6, you can have 4 objectives and 6 research questions. That is acceptable. When you have 4 objectives, the minimum number of research questions you can have is 4. But some of the objectives may be in such a way that in order to achieve those objectives, you need 2 questions to address that objective. That is acceptable. So look at objective and make sure your question is handshaking that objective. Look at the first objective. To assess the extent to which business analytics is adopted and used in the banking sector of Ghana. Look at the question. To what extent is business analytics currently being adopted and integrated into the banking operations in Ghana? Second objective was to examine the key drivers and barriers influencing the implementation. question is, what factors enable or hinder the successful implementation of business analytics? The last one was to compare business analytics practices in Ghana with the global best practices in the developed economies. So you want to compare what is happening in the developing one with what is happening in the developed one. Question, how do business analytics practices in Ghana compare with those in developed economies? The minimum number of questions should be the total number of objectives. But you can still have more questions than objectives. That of the social networking one is also here, and you can look at it and you can see that it follows the same pattern. So one of the things that a reader will read and will really begin to become worried by looking at your questions on objective is that he sees that you have, 4 objectives and then you have 3 questions. They don't make sense. They don't make sense. It is wrong. Anyway, a good research question is a good research question. It's clear, it's focused, it's not complex. It shouldn't be answerable with a yes or no. Most of the time, when you have a research question that is yes, no, okay, or easily found facts, then you have an issue. It must require both research and analytics on the part of you to be able to address that. So if you look at these questions, you can't just say yes. To what extent is business analytics currently being adopted in Ghana? You can't say yes. What factors enable or hinder the success? You can't say yes. How does the use of, you can't say yes. How do business analytics, you cannot say yes. But when you say that, no, there are some questions you ask and the person is forced to say, oh, yes, of course. Oh, no. Oh, yes or no. That is what you want to avoid. Now, what you are learning is not just for your module here. It is also for your thesis, your dissertation you're going to write. So everything you're learning here is not only for this, it is also for, so by now, if you already have your proposal in mind, you should know that you may probably have to correct some few things. This is not clear, okay? This is not clear. Why are social networking sites harmful? Okay. But a clear one is how are online users experiencing or addressing privacy issues on such social networking sites as MySpace or Facebook? You are being specific. You got to be clear. A strong research question should never leave room for ambiguity or interpretation. Next. When you have a question that is not focused, this is what it means. What is the effect on the environment from global warming? What is the effect on the environment from global warming? That is unfocused. You got to be focused. How is glacial melting? Now you are being specific. Because when you say global warming, you aren't being specific. Glacial melting affecting penguins in the Antarctica. You're being very specific. You can gather data to prove this point. Okay. There are some of them, it's not focused. So it will take you forever to be able to address it. So the unfocused research question is so broad, it couldn't be adequately answered in a book. But a focused one is a bit narrow, okay, to specific. Now, I'm not saying that that has nothing to do with when we're talking about research topic. Because in the research topic, we said that you don't want to take a topic that is too broad. That's not what we are talking about. Now you selected your topic already. The question has to be narrow enough to be able to get answers. Specific enough. The place must be specific. The time period must be clear. The course must be clear. Okay. You want to look at the effect. For example, you can't say what is the effect of price on quantity demanded. You can't say that. You cannot say that. What is the effect of price of waakye on the quantity demanded of waakye within the Legon metropolitan area, okay, or within the first 1,000 miles kilometer, something you demarcate. Then you now have a specific one for you to do a research within the time duration that you have. A good one must be must be, appropriately complex, not too ambiguous, not too simple. The two simple ones are how are doctors addressing diabetes in the US? It's too simple. Okay? But what are common traits of those suffering from diabetes in America? And how can these commonalities be used to aid the medical community in prevention of the disease? You got to be a little bit macho. The work has to be a little bit macho. It has to be a bit macho so that when somebody reads it, it doesn't look like class one question. Okay? The general rule of thumb, okay, is if a quick Google search can answer your question, it is not effective enough. Okay? It's likely not good. A Google research should not be able to, ChatGPT should not be able to address the question just like that. ChatGPT must struggle a bit to be able to address it. Now, we need to now go to, so you address your research objective. Okay, I wish I could go back to show you something, but if you can remember the chart, let's look at proposed, sometimes we call it preliminary literature review. Preliminary because you will come back to it again. That part here, that part is a part of the research problem, and your goal is to explain the concept behind the research, present theoretical underpinnings of what you are doing, pour out the research question. Okay. Now, if you're a beginner, this can be hard because sometimes you don't even know what is a theoretical review and an empirical review. So the rule of thumb is that use this section to introduce the relevant literature you need to read or review. And let me tell you, the best thing you want to do is to create a thematic analysis, a tabular taxonomy, a literature taxonomy. And I'll show you a couple very soon. You explain the keywords in the work, possible factors, what people have been using. For example, if you have a particular dependent variable, let's say heart disease, and you want to look at the factors that contribute to the, arrival of, a person having a heart disease. The heart disease, those factors that people have been generally talking about, that's what you want to discuss. You are trying to bring out a particular factor that people are not considering, like age. And you want to consider that. Maybe people have considered age or something, but you want to bring that. So let the reader know that these are the factors that people are saying affect heart disease. And you should look for, this is where you quote top class papers that are cited in top journals, 3-star, 4-star. Let me tell you something. If you quote papers that are in 3-star, 4-star, and again, if you don't know, go and type ABS general ranking, ABS general ranking, ABS general ranking. It gives you all the top stars in the latest edition is 2024 December. Okay? That will give you all the stars of your work. Try and get those papers into your literature. Because when you have great papers into your literature, it is an indication that you are well read. Also, the papers you're going to be citing, they can go to the past, but majority of them should be for the past 5 years to indicate that you are more current than antiquated. So you got to categorize your literature, identify the keywords in your work. This is an example. But please note, this is where you load your work with a lot of literature. This study investigates the impact of mobile phones on the micro-trading activities of women traders in Ghana. To obtain answers to this objective, 4 strands of literature will be reviewed. The first strand will explore the concept of trading. You see, this person is introducing it as a preliminary literature review, but he's just giving just the headings, just the summary of the headings he's going to do in the real work of chapter 2. But he's just giving the summary of those headings. The first strand of literature will explore the concept of trading from the perspective of transaction cost theory. So he's connected a theoretical underpinning to it. Transaction cost theory will be explained later. Transaction cost theory is arguably the most commonly used theory to study issues related to assessment of the impact of ICTs on trade. Yes, Salasi.
Doc, with the one you are reading now, since he's now introducing them before he speaks about it, I was thinking, isn't it supposed to rather be in abstract?
No. This is preliminary literature review. Abstract is something that you have finished and you are now putting everything together. Abstract is when you are putting everything you have written together. So you've done everything, you've written the entire work, you've written the entire everything, even gotten conclusions, results, recommendations, and everything, detected even direction for further research. You've got your result, then you now put everything. Abstract is written last, but it's written first at the beginning of the work. Abstract is executive summary of everything. This is a preliminary literature review that you are doing. Opele, are you with me?
Yes, Prof.
All right. Now, transaction costs are described as the cost of running blah, blah, blah. He quoted Williamson with page. Now, why do you think he quoted 1985 with a page number? Who can tell me? Why do you think he quoted 1985 with a page number? Anybody? Quick. Tell me quickly. Why do you think that? Nobody. Interesting. The reason is because he has put quotation mark on the cost of running a system there. This study will examine the impact of mobiles on the costs involved in micro trading. The second and third strand, you see, now he's combining the two because he says he's giving a summary, a preliminary literature review, a summary of the literature, not a summary of the work, but the literature. Because he's not done much research. He's already now looked at the bigger picture of where he's going. So he's kind of tiptoeing, giving bullet start on what he's going to do. Sometimes when you have a tabular taxonomy, it helps you to summarize because the tabular taxonomy will help you to be able to know how to, organize the work. The second and third strand of the literature will review the literature on features of mobile phones and benefits of using the mobile phones in the reducing cost trading. Then the final one will examine the effect of mobile phones generated by virtue of benefits. Mobile phones are conceptualized to have three effects on its adopters: incremental amplification, transformation, and production. These effects will be used to analyze the effect of mobile phones on trade. So you see, he's settled the beginner to expect these things. My advice is that you might want to now let the reader know that you're going to discuss at least 2 theories and connect the theories to your work. That is called theoretical review. And you're going to also discuss at least 2 empirical factors that you're going to use to connect to your work. So we have 2 portions of the literature review. One is known as a theoretical literature review, where you need theories like transaction cost theory, dynamic theory, dynamic capability theory. You need eclectic paradigm, portfolio diversification, agency cost, asymmetric information, property right, things like that, resource theory of the firm. All of these theories that you will need to use and drive your work. You mentioned about 2 or 3 of them that you are going to use to drive your work. And then you identify some specific areas of the empirical factors. So maybe you're going to look at a literature on, let's say you're looking at non-performing loans. So on the situation of banks, you're going to discuss a literature related to the non-performing loans in the banking sector. Another literature is going to look at, something about factors that are off balance sheet. So, or maybe literature related to Africa when it comes to that aspect. But these are empirical things, what people have done related to, You got to have that broad 2 bullets, 2 major strands that you want the reader to know. Then after the preliminary literature review, your next step in the proposal is the proposed methodology. You see, these ones, because they are all part of the proposal, they are all not supposed to be long, but they are supposed to be detailed. Even though they are not long, they are detailed. You're kind of summarizing things for the reader to know that, there's a lot coming. Now, the proposed methodology is where you indicate to the reader, See, I see a lot of students who, oh, this research is going to be quantitative, qualitative, quantitative, qualitative. Master, stop that. Stop that. There are some specifics you can mention. I don't need to know whether it's quantitative or qualitative because I know. Once you tell me that you're going to use a predictive analytics forecasting model like ARIMA, okay, or you're going to use LSTM, long short-term memory, straight away, I know it's quantitative. You don't need to tell me that it's quantitative. If you tell me that you're going to use random forest, decision tree, lasso regression, elastic net, you're going to use, I know it is quantitative you're doing. Once you tell me you're going to use support vector machine, decision trees, you're going to use AdaBoost, you're going to use XGBoost. I know it's quantitative. So stop going too round about a word. Just say that this research is going to adopt specific machine learning models such as blah, 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 to be able to do this. Boom. The unit of analysis is going to look at customers within a specific bank. Okay. It proposes to use about 3,000 customers, okay, who are working in these particular industries. Being specific there. If you think you're going to do qualitative and it is a survey, be precise what survey you're going to do. If it's a questionnaire, what specific questionnaire you're going to do. Where is the data source? Be specific. What is a population sample and what is a population size? Population sample, the size of the sample, the size of the sample, the period of study. Be clear with that. Be clear with that. Sample, size, period, country. Very important. Very important. Then the data source. If it is Refinitiv Econ, if it is World Bank, if it is Penn World, if it is World Development Indicators, whatever it is, if it is bank's annual report, if it is bank's financial statement, if it is government parastatal document, the Hansard, whatever it is, be precise and concise and state the source of your data. If you are not too sure of what the source of the data is, the data may be collected from, that's how it is. So that if it is not collected from that, later on we'll know. And that is how. Then when it comes to the specific proposed methodology, so if you say that you're going to use autoregressive integrated moving average, okay, ARIMA, okay, which will briefly be used to determine whether, we can forecast the sales of this particular company for the next period of blah, 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 blah. You're done. We'll also use regression, okay, where the proposed dependent variable or the target variable is blood pressure, which may be affected by age, may be affected by weight, may be affected by cholesterol level, may be affected by that, okay? And these factors, okay, where these factors are the independent variables or the features. You let the reader know. And if you have the mathematical model there, oh, come on, put it there, write the mathematical model. Even if you don't have the specific mathematical model because you've not come out with a model, put it there, the general model. There is a general model for logistic regression. Then you explain the key element. There's a general model for other nonlinear regression, like any particular polynomial or exponential regression. There's a general model there. There's a general model for classification. For k-means, there's a model for k-means clustering, agglomerative clustering. There's a model there. There's a model that you have for a simple regression, multiple regression, dummy variable regression, lasso regression, ridge regression, elastic net regression. There's a model for support vector machine. There's a model for random forest, decision trees, AdaBoost. You have the model. You have the model. Put the model there. Put the model there. Put the model there. Let the reader know that even though you don't know fully, you are driven by that. And you will find these models throughout your reading that you were doing. Put the model. Here's an example, okay, of someone's work that he's doing, that he's actually going to do something related to a qualitative study. So the person has written clearly he's going to use a questionnaire. He has 150 students he's going to interview and blah, 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 blah. Now, the next is what is known as the contribution of the study. Contribution. contribution of the study, which is also called the significance of the study. This is where you got to prove whether what you are doing has been useful, whether what you are doing is sensible, whether what you are doing should be bought. You have to market your knowledge to the reader so that the reader will be willing and able to buy your knowledge. You discuss the potential benefits or implications of the work. You got to discuss the implication, the benefit, the significance, the contribution of your work to future research, to academic research, to practice, managerial practice, and to policy, regulatory policy. So how does this research inform the research area? How is what you are doing? Okay, what are you adding to the body of knowledge? What are you extending in the literature? What is it that you think that by you? What is it that has not been applied, you are applying? What is it that has not been done that you are doing? What methodology has not been used in this particular concern or prediction, churn prediction or credit score prediction? What is it that has not been used but you are using? You're adding to the body of knowledge. This is the first time or second time. This is one of the few studies to have looked at this. This is one of the few studies to have done this. What is it? How do you think managers are going to benefit? Oh, by the way, the first one is the most important one. Okay, the first one, what you are doing to the body of academic research is key. Is key. The second one is practice. How are managers, practitioners, employees, organizations, how are they shareholders, stakeholders? How are they going to benefit your work? What is it going to do in their decision-making process? What is it going to do in shaping the trajectory towards the performance of the company, of the industry, of the whatever? How are they going to benefit? Suppose you were not doing an academic exercise. Who will buy what you claim you have? Who will buy it? Who will buy it? Who will pay you money like a consultant for you to give them that document you have prepared in your book and say, I will pay 100,000 for this? Who will do that? Market that thing into the document so that whoever reads it will say that I'm ready for you. Finally, implication to policy. What policy implications are within this work? How is it going to benefit? How can the government use the knowledge you have given and do something for that company or for that industry? How can the regulators of the industry, so let's say you are doing something for the banks in Ghana, how can the central bank benefit from this research you are doing? What capital adequacy ratio, minimum requirement ratio, CAMELS ratio could be touched based on what you have said so that they can augment the solvency, the financial discipline of the industry? What specific governmental regulation, okay? What specific industry regulation, what specific industrial items could be touched to make what you are saying a possibility? What can the international organizations, okay, IGOs, what can they do? What can the IMF benefit? How is it? Think about a policy-wide scenario that can be brought to bear with what you are doing. Be clear, be precise and concise, be simple and exact. Let's look at a couple of examples. The significance of the study can be viewed along 3 lines: research, practice, and policies. But sometimes some of these ones might not be too excellent, but it's just to let you know what others are doing. Concerning the research significance, this study goes beyond current research on e-banking in rural banks by examining the strategies of implementing and integrating e-banking technology. Literature on the strategic perspective on e-banking in rural banks, literature is arguably non-existent on Ghana, and perhaps this spreads to West Africa. So what this person is doing is that he's trying to say that he's filling the Ghana gap. I always say that don't just use it's not in Ghana, it's not in Ghana, it's not in Ghana as the justification. Okay. What you should also do always is indicate why it is not in Ghana and why when you bring it to Ghana is even good. Maybe the literature is not in Ghana because it's not needed. It is not needed. It is needed in the US. It's not needed. There's nothing to want to have in Ghana. That's why. Okay. So let the reader know why it is important for it to be done in Ghana, because Ghana has a specific peculiar cultural differences from those of the other countries that this thing has been applied to. Because when you look at the way and manner thoughts and behaviors are brought to bear on the subject in question, on the phenomenon in question, that is not the same thought and behavior that are brought to bear in other places in the world. And so the likelihood of you finding results that are different by virtue of the differences in thoughts and behavior, that might explain why this has to be done in Ghana. And not because it's non-existent in Ghana or it's non-existent in Africa, then we have to do it. Maybe there's no need. So beyond reasonable doubt to the reader, why? What is it that makes the case of Ghana, the case of Africa, the case of your continent, that geographical area, what makes that specifically that unique? So if you say that there are wars that are happening in Gaza, okay, what makes that war in Haiti? Because somebody will say, oh, but there is also war in Gaza. There's also war in Colombia. There's also war in Palestine. There's also war in this. So what is the big deal? The big deal is that this war is not politically motivated. This war is not religiously motivated. This war is business motivated. The motivation behind the war is not the same motivation behind the ones that you are seeing. That makes it unique for research to be done. Be precise. Market your work so well that somebody will say, oh, wow, now I get it. Now is the reason why. Eve says, I want to know if the recommendation derived from the implications of the study of the main findings. Yes, well, it is in the main findings. The main finding, the recommendation comes from the findings. Okay. So that is the answer to the work. If it is not clear, please let me know. Concerning significance to practice, the study will provide guidelines to rural. So this is practice. So you are going to advise managers. More specifically, this is the central bank of the rural banks, okay, the Apex Bank. Okay, how they will benefit from it, that is all there. Then you have significance to policy. Okay, and then you can talk about that of the significance to policy. Okay, now go to the limitations. Don't joke with that. Limitations are influences that the researcher cannot control. They are there, but within the time frame you have, you can't handle that. You have just a year, you have even probably half a year, probably even 3 months to submit your work. You do not have the time freedom to be able to go beyond that or to be able to collect a long data time period. And so you got to indicate your limitations. Any limitation that might influence the results should be mentioned. The analysis, the nature of reporting, the instrument, the sample, the constraint, all of them has to be documented. Point out the limitations of the research issues, which may influence the research. The definition, that's why, for example, if you're looking at corporate social responsibility, are you looking at all aspects? Because CSR is broad. Or you're looking at corporate philanthropy, are you looking at the specific donation alone? Because corporate social responsibility is broader, donation is specific. But can you get broader data? Or you want to focus on the specific? Okay. Indicate clearly what is included and what is not. Say that my research, I have included this, my focus is on this particular one. I want to focus only on commercial banks. I don't want to focus on these other ones. I want to specifically focus on supply chain managers alone, not the CEOs of the company, because of this and this and this. Declare which correspondence will be involved, who are going to be interviewed. Why don't you interview all the workers? My focus is not to interview the workers, so really, my focus is to interview only the HR managers of the companies. Very out. Which data will not be collected. I'm going to collect this data. I'm not going to collect that data. Be precise and concise. For example, a sample of 50 computerized RCBs will be selected out of the 95 based on the proximity, based on the proximity for ease of data collection and time constraints of the study. You have pitched it, bang. So somebody will come and tell you, why didn't you? But I said it's based on the proximity. Do you remember? The study will not cover the use of electronic channels like ATMs, POS. Because for somebody to say, why didn't you cover ATMs, POS? There is something we call is or is not framework. Write it down. Is or is not framework. Is and is not framework. Write it down. Is and is not framework. Once you have this is and is not framework, the moment you talk to somebody about what something is, it will guide you. ChatGPT can even sometimes guide you. It will help you to know what it is not. It will help you to be able to now couch your limitation and delimitations of the way. The research will focus on the computerization project under the mandate of the Apex Bank and nothing else. There is a possibility that some of the respondents may not return their questionnaires as acceptable. So it won't touch on their financial and operational performance before and after computerization. You have clearly stated. The study will focus more on the banks than their customers in assessing the challenges and prospects of the project. Be clear, be clear. Now, talk about the outline of your study. The outline. The first chapter will comprise research background, problem, purpose, objectives, questions, significance, scope, limitation, risk, and all of that. The first chapter is what we have just done today. Chapter 2 will focus on the review of the literature, on the specific empirical and theoretical review. So you mentioned it, where the theoretical review will look at, empirical review will look at them. The third chapter entails the context of the study. The context of the study will cover the brief overview of the health system in Ghana or the banking system in Ghana and the profile of the case setting. Chapter 4 will deal with the methodological ambience, okay, which highlights on the study area, the source of data, the sampling, the techniques, the data collection, method, data processing, mode of analysis. When I teach you the research methods, the quantitative part in week 7 going, I'll show you the step-by-step data pre-processing, exploratory data analytics, okay, descriptive analytics, prescriptive analytics, predictive analytics, all of those elements that may be needed in your research. Chapter 5 will entail the presentation, analytics, discussion of the findings. Finally, chapter 6 will comprise the summary, conclusions, and recommendations and direction for further research. References and appendices will follow. There's no chapter for references and appendices. That is why it says references and appendices will follow chapter 6. This is called structure of your thesis. Structure of your thesis. Beautiful. Then you can now write your timeline. The timeline is indicating clearly chapter 1, which data are you going to start, which data are you going to complete. Meeting with your supervisor is consistent. Chapter 2, which data are you going to complete? You see, there is meeting with your supervisor in every section. What I've just given you is too short. You must have detailed things you're going to do and timelines you're going to do so that it is clear to the reader. Meeting with the supervisor must be there every time. In fact, some people have a different chart where they submit as an attachment or as an appendix to and indicate week by week meeting. So at the week by week meeting, you have date for meeting the supervisor, which is weekly. And then you have my signature, supervisor signature. My signature, supervisor signature. My signature, supervisor's signature. Time of the meeting, duration of the meeting. Massa, when you submit that, then we know clearly that you know what you have done. This is not a project schedule. It's zero. If you write this thing, January, February, March, nothing. This is zero. You will be marked based on this approach. Okay, the organization of the structure will be 5 marks. The relevance of the topic to the MSc Analytics program will be 5 marks. Evidence of familiarity with the relevant literature will be 10 marks. The methodology and the sampling will be 10 marks. Data management and analysis. This is the most important one. Your analysis of the finding. That is where you see the graphs, the tables, the charts, the graphs, the tables, the chart, 20 marks. Acknowledgement of sources of information. Appropriate referencing is 5%. Language, clarity, expression, correct usage, 10%. Evidence of originality in thinking, 10%. Main findings and contribution to knowledge. That is key. Your contribution to the study of knowledge should not be, because it's not been done in Ghana, I'm not doing it. Almost no, it should be. Like, let somebody who doesn't care about Ghana still want to read your work because it it satisfied me, even though he's in America or in the European country or in Asian country. That is the first part of our work today. Components of a research proposal. We are done. Second, how do you conclude your research? Suppose you've done all the research. How do you conclude? Then we'll come to the final part, which is how you write the abstract. Okay, so one thing about research is that your entire research must have this structure. Your chapter 1 should be the introduction, literature, context, methodology, results, conclusion. This is a general overview of your work. Now, what goes into your discussion and analysis? What goes into that? By then you have your context. By then you have your literature. But then you have documented your methodology. How do you analyze the results? That is on worry. We will look at proper analysis in week 7. The analysis may need the triangulation of data from various techniques. You want to create, explain, predict social phenomena. What do the findings tell you about our research? You see, sometimes after you've gotten the results in a table, graphical form, you now have to go back to the beginning of your work, your chapter 1. Go and take each research question. Then you tell the reader, it may be recalled that research question 1 stated that. It may be recalled that research questions 2 was that. Hypothesis number 3 indicated that. Blah, 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 blah. To answer this, one can look at table 4 and figure 6. Because the 2 helps us to be able to address. You can see that this one went up, this one came down. The statistics is that, showing that it's significant, blah, 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 blah. So remind the reader about the research question you pose from the beginning. Because your essence of that analysis is to address each of those questions. How do the findings compare with the previous? So once you've indicated a finding, that we have been able to indicate that indeed, advertising has a significant effect on the quantity demanded of Burkutu gene bitters. That's what you said. Advertising affects it by 20%. And this is significant. This is in tandem with the studies by Kofi Amo and Junior, and also study by Onyasari and Afodazi, and also a study by Sanders and Atropos. Okay, you are connecting your work with what those people have done. However, they indicated that their results show some bit of linearity, whereas ours shows some bit of non-linearity in the work. This might be because of the diminishing marginal returns that we believe that advertising might take in the long term. And then you connect it to that work. And then you can let the reader know. So when there are differences, don't worry. Explain why there may be differences. When there are agreement, again, don't worry. Support why they are agreement. Connect it with your theory. This is in agreement with the agency theory. Because the agency theory said that this is an agreement with the resource-based view of the firm, which indicated that all firms are able to do better because they have wonderful resources. So connect it to that, and then let it meet actually encircle the skeleton of the work, so that whoever is reading it says, wow, wow, wow. Are there contradictions? Yes. If they are, indicate what did these contradictions tell you? Why did they exist? Don't say that, oh, my work did not agree with the main work. Oh, why? I want what I have said be in agreement with what is in the literature. No. What you have said is unique to what you have done. And so you got to explain why what is happening instead of it should have happened like the years have happened. No, explain why what is happening is happening. And this is very key. Sometimes my advice is that try and run the analysis before you even come to the discussion, before you even come and start the work. In fact, if you can get your data quickly and run some quick analysis, it will give you a fair idea of where you are going. Bring out the key lessons. Let the reader, I've said it, connect it to the theory. Now, that is the discussion part, okay? And then whenever you're looking at the conclusion of your work, your conclusion of your dissertation or your thesis, the conclusion covers three things. And sometimes people don't know this, so it's important you know. In your conclusion, after your discussion, in your conclusion, you got to summarize the study. So first, this study had looked at the blah, 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 because of this gap. Revisit the research question, the model, the framework. And then after you've summarized everything, then you indicate the implication to research, practice, and policies. Again, okay, you're going to, now this is where you now bring the proper implications to research, practice, and policy, all within the conclusion. And then you can now indicate the directions for further research. Believe you me, as you are going through your work, you will be noticing some further research you should do. Put them down, put them down, put them down, put them down, put them down. And as you go and document this, as you go and document this, as you go and document this, by the time you get to this side, you have an enormous future direction for future research that you will baptize the reader with. Okay? And then in fact, sometimes during your readings, you would have noted other people who have also even mentioned certain things as direction for further research within your corner zone. You can draw their knowledge and mention the same thing, but also cite them to let the reader know that is it. That is how you run out your, after your future tech. Now, let me give you one final tip. Your final sentence, your very, very final sentence, find a way. I learned this thing in Warwick University during my PhD discussion, and it always stuck in my mind. It says that try and find a way, somewhere, I don't know how, don't ask me how. Find a way to write your final sentence to couch the title of your work. I want to repeat that. This is a coup. Find a way and write your final sentence to take some key words of the title of your dissertation or thesis. That's a fantastic thing to do. Indicate the takeaways, the summarize in few words what the study did and what it has achieved, the methods used, hypothesis, key lessons, and everything indicates that. That's all part of the conclusion that we have indicated. Now, the abstract. The abstract. The abstract is also called the executive summary. Okay? The executive summary. This study set out to achieve, investigate, explore, explain, determine, using, then you mentioned the specific machine learning techniques that you use. Okay? You also have to mention the sample, the duration, and all of that. Okay? From the findings, it was noted that, or we find out, or the study found out that, this and this and this and this and this and this. And therefore, managers, that's the way forward. Therefore, managers and will have to do this. Researchers will have to take the techniques that have been used and do comparative analytics of other studies, okay? And then indicate each one of these comparative analytics of all of these studies. Fair outline, very good for dissertations, but for journals, articles, the style will vary. So you may see these things sometimes. Some fair outlines will vary from others. Let's take an example. We began this study with a quest of determining how organizations can learn and transfer knowledge in and between technology projects. Now, to this quest, we drew on theory of meaning structures in organizations, which was extended in a theoretical framework, the organizational learning cycle, as a means of facilitating a transformational learning process within technology projects and generating knowledge definable into actions which maximize success in technology projects. Evaluating this framework within a case study, we gain empirical evidence to strengthen its internal validity. At this stage, we then ask ourselves, what is the way forward? and then you can continue that. Now, it's very important that you revisit the research framework. For example, in our literature, we propose a research framework which suggests or proposes blah, 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 blah. However, the discussion and analysis of our findings, then you now bring the following new insight and confirmations to the earlier propositions or the hypothesis. Now, when you get new insight, try and indicate it first, second, third, we find that, second, we find that, third, we find that, and lastly, we find that. Be clear, be clear. Sometimes remind the reader what the conceptual framework was or what the model that you actually used was, and connect that model to the overall work. Revisiting the research framework or the model can help you to be able to know what others expect you to get. For example, there is a theory that says that it's called the law of demand. The law of demand says that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. But when you were able to do your research, you were able to realize that the higher the price, rather, the higher the quantity demanded. So you thought that you were speaking not in favor of the law of demand, but by doing deeper digging, you came to realize that there's another law against the original law known as the law of Giffen or the Giffen paradox, which says that at some point, there are some particular commodities that do not follow the law of demand. In fact, the higher the price of those goods, the more you will buy, like ostentatious goods, like luxury goods. Okay. For example, if you see somebody holding iPhone 16 Pro Max, and he's telling you that the price of this iPhone 16 Pro Max is $20, ooh, will you buy? No. Reason, because it doesn't qualify to be sold that cheap. For such a commodity, you believe the higher the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Okay? That is why some footballers, some multi-millionaires and billionaires will buy expensive things. And somebody will say, you're buying only this ring, just this ring for $2 million. Why? The thing is that it's not for you. You were not brought into this world to buy that commodity, but they were brought in and they worked their way to buy that commodity. To them, the higher the price, the higher their quantity they will supply. Okay. So it's very important to try and find out why something is happening instead of saying the mind does not agree with the status quo. Of course, it shouldn't agree with the status quo all the time. There must be a reason why. You might be on your pathway to developing a unique theory. You're about to develop something the world is yet to see. And that is why you have found a different pathway. Indicate the implications of the research. I think we've talked about this, but indicate the implications of the research very in toto. Let the reader know that you clearly understand the implications of the research. Now, if you are talking about implications of the research, it's very important that you let the reader know that you are discussing the implications of the research. When I say implication, to practice, to policies, to research, be clear. Be clear. Let the reader know that contribution to research is this, contribution to practice is this, contribution to management is this. Be clear, precise, and concise, and let the reader know about that. Okay, so each one of them you can talk. You see here, I have implication to policy, implication to practice, implication to research. They are all there. You should let the reader know about each one of them. And when it comes to direction for further research, what should further research do? Acknowledge that, for example, if you have some, you see, one of the things people don't do is that they don't acknowledge, they talk about all the good things their work is doing, and not all the bad things is done. Okay. Highlight what new or future research will do. That is like what you could not do. That's a bad thing you did not do. Okay. Indicate why your work is limited. Yes, you develop a wonderful model, but your sample size is small. Let me tell you some of the things that might limit your work, and you may use them as an advantage for future research. One of them is time, the duration of your work. You would have wished you had a longer time period, but you have a shorter time period. So indicate that future work can extend the data period and then look at it from this. Now, why they have to do that, you have to indicate. Because by increasing the sample size, you'll be able to handle all the heterogeneity that may be hidden in the work. The unobserved heterogeneity, okay, can be handled by having a panel or longitudinal data rather than just focusing on a short panel. Suggest new methods that could be used. Suggest new unit of analysis that could be used. Suggest, other aspects. For example, if you have looked at foreign and domestic companies, suggest what other foreign can you look at? Like when you take the foreign alone, can you look at foreign African ones and foreign non-African ones? Foreign European versus foreign Asian. So let's look at the diversity of the foreign. So we'll be able to suggest these things. Don't say, I don't know what further research I should do. No. Get deeper. Some further research. Now, future direction is this. This study makes a case that future research, strategies, and policies in telemedicine in developing countries should have a broader and long-term perspective to ensure the sustainability of telemedicine initiatives. A broader perspective requires evaluation of how technologies which have low costs of adoption and diffusion can be adapted medical practices in resource-poor contexts. While this may not be applicable to all medical disciplines, low-cost innovations may be appropriate paths towards developing. So you are making a suggestion for future research. And then bring some referencing that are unique. In fact, when it comes to referencing, there's a Harvard style that we all used. So you look at this Harvard style example, several examples. For those of you who don't have a reference, don't go and type your references. Use referencing software. If you have not been taught, okay, note, you need to use a referencing software. Get one of them. You have Zotero, which is free. You have Mendeley, okay, which is free. You have EndNote, which is not free. Okay. You have other ones that are free, other ones that are RefWorks. Okay. Try and find one. Don't be typing your reference. Don't type. Just insert, then the bibliography is generated automatically for you. If you don't know how to do that, ask in the page and you get support for that. Okay, now let's go to the final one, how to write the abstract. How to write the abstract. I told you the abstract is the first to be written. Okay, no, the abstract is written first, but the last to be written. I hope that makes sense. It's written first, that is the last to be written. After you've done everything and you're now organizing everything, you've created your table of content, everything is done, then you write your abstract. How do we write a good abstract? Now, when you go to Emerald, Emerald actually gives a set of guidelines for authors on how to write a good abstract. The guidelines tells you that an abstract should summarize key elements of a research paper. Summarize key. So if you don't summarize the key, it's the abstract that people are going to read to know whether your work is good or not. It must sell. It must sell. So what goes into the abstract? What you are doing. By that, I mean the purpose of what you are doing. See, you got to think and write your abstract. Sometimes you got to write your abstract roughly, like draft it down as you are even doing your work. What exactly are you doing? And you have to write it so well with intent of selling it. So I want you to see your work you have done as a rich commodity. It is so precious a commodity that like a top level gadget worth $10 billion. And it's so expensive and so important to you that you want to tell someone why. For example, ladies and gentlemen, I have this phone, okay, and this phone is about £1,005, but the way you can market this it can make somebody buy it at 2,500 pounds. So my point is that you got to sell the idea, the knowledge you have, so that someone will say, wow, I want to buy it. And that depends on the kind of words you put into it. What is the purpose of what you're doing? You want to investigate the impact of location, occupation, and religion on the quantity demanded of Jim Vites, Akpeteshie Jim Vites. Noting that others have looked at the impact of price, the impact of complement price, substitute price, the impact of advert. Others have even looked at the impact of income. But you want to consider location, occupation, and religion. And not just religion. There are specific religion. You want to look at Christianity, Muslim, and Buddhism. This is a special angle that majority of studies have ignored in the past decades. And you want to do that using a sample of this number of, companies over the period of 2000 to 2024, using a specific methodology, okay, that captures nonlinearity assumptions. And then you name the methodology. You want to do a comparative analysis of the study with other methods that have been done, and also comparative analysis of the markets by looking at two different markets. The findings are as follows. Then you talk about the findings. Okay. So how you did it? You use the methodology to do all of the work. Okay. The findings. What did you find? You were able to dictate that price has a positive effect on this. This one has a negative effect on that. This has a positive effect on that. Okay. However, even though this one is insignificant, okay, when you use the nonlinear function, it became significant. Which means that nonlinearity might explain why majority of studies are finding such situations. The implication for practice, for policy, for research, you indicate that this study is the first study to contribute to the literature related to nonlinear regressions being used to estimate the dynamic implications of this and that and this. Indicate how original your work is, how contributory your work is. Indicate whether you are making a methodological contribution, whether you are making a theoretical contribution, or empirical contribution, or a policy contribution. Indicate that. Be so precise and concise that the reader is not left in any doubt. The abstract, it has to be there. It has to be there. It has to be there so well. It has to normally be between 150 to 250 words. So let's dig a little bit deeper. The purpose. What are the reasons for writing the research? What are the aims? How are the objectives achieved? Include the main methods, the main, or not all the petty things that you did, all the statistical perspective. No, the main method for the research, and include the paradigm. Okay, what paradigm? What if you had a philosophical paradigm? Whether it's positivistic, no, whatever. Indicate that. What is approach to the topic? What is the theoretical or subject scope of the paper? What was found in the study? Using the analysis, the discussion, what was determined? What are the implications of the result? What are the contributions of the result? Which aspect of your work changes current research for good? What can other researchers do with what you have had? Other researchers who have data can plug in their data to the model you've developed and find potential what? Other research can extend what you have done to what? What is the new thing you have detected? How will the new thing you have found shape future research? What outcomes, what implications for practice, policies, applications, and consequences have you identified? How will the research affect upon the business and enterprises that you are dealing with? Don't just make one sentence. Be detailed with the impact. How is it going to influence policy? What changes to practice policy? I'm just putting all of this to you. It doesn't mean that your work is going to affect all of them. No. But those that it affects the most is what you're going to consider. What is the commercial or economic impact of your work? And this is key. Originality. What is new? What is new? State the value of the paper. To whom? My point will be to other researchers. To other researchers who are most likely to read what you have done. See, your work will not be read. If it is your thesis will not be read by many people. The thesis will probably be read by only 2 people in your life. Even you yourself, if you don't take care after finishing, you'll not read it again. Unless you publish it, unless you decide to convert it to publication. Under your own, decision or under the tutelage of your supervisor. Other than that, you want to make it in such a way that somebody will be willing to, read it. Here's an example. This research presents a case study of the adoption of telemedicine in Rwanda. Telemedicine offers a new set of new and innovative health solutions which hold promise to such resource-poor environment. The findings suggest that the commitment of government to telemedicine, the strategic choice of using low-cost and less complex technologies, strategic partnership with educational and technology companies are factors which have influenced telemedicine implementation in Rwanda. This study concludes that low-cost innovations which are adaptable to the resource constraint in developing countries may be the appropriate pathway to developing sustainable telemedicine initiatives. This should be the agenda for future research and strategies. Before you submit your thesis, there are some few things you need to do. You are ending. Check grammar, check structure, check presentation counts, check references, and double check references. I have seen many people who have inputted references in the work, citations in the work, but they are not referenced at the bottom. And I've seen some who have referenced at the bottom, but they are not in the work. You know what you should do? Don't even be used to, let me write the reference and I'll later do the citation and I'll later put it at the bottom. Never do that. The moment you put anything in the work, find the citation and find the reference and put it at the bibliography at the bottom immediately. I've been so used to that. Don't wait because you'll forget. Don't put it there and highlight. No, that's what some will do. You put it there, then they want to highlight. You put it there, don't do that. Do it on the go. Do it on the go. Cite whilst you type. Cite whilst you type. Cite whilst you type. Cite whilst you type. And reference whilst you cite. And reference whilst you type. That is it. Each paragraph presenting a key argument or statement should be referenced. I've said it. I will say each sentence, especially in the beginning. The only place you may not have to be referencing a lot is in your analysis and discussion part. The analysis part. Because that one is from what you have done and you are telling us what you've done. Don't begin any sentence with a bracket, like Danielson argues that. That's wrong. Bring out the Danielson and put the 2003 in the bracket. Know where to position your full stops. Know where to position your commas. The price of good does not affect inflation. Watch the way it has been written. Where you put the full stops matter a lot. In Nigeria and in Ghana, inflation is now silent. Know where to put your full stops. Don't put initials in your inline references. So your references should have, for example, don't do this. Mensa J 2008. Therefore, don't put that initials. It's just Mensa. That's it. Check your paragraphs. This is not a good paragraph. Check your paragraphs. This is not a good paragraph. This is not good. This is good. Proper. Good paragraph. And remember, the scoring will still stand, as we have said. You are about to embark on a journey that will be challenged. Do all these research techniques from procedure, do they matter? Sometimes people ask, do they all matter? The answer is yes. In life, in many things, you do that. Yes, Solace.
Well, please, can you go back to the yes, please can you go back to the paragraph that you said is no good?
I'm there.
Please, what's no good about it? I don't get.
Okay, so you can see that here, at the point here, the person did not put a gap between this sentence and that next one. So if you look at it, the type of benefit, there should be, you should have clicked after the effect and enter so that there's a space. Other than that, you should have continued.
Oh, okay.
And then if you look at this previous one, okay, the same thing. He has written the sentence, okay, and then after the effect, you should have entered so that the next paragraph will continue. But then he still put the same gaps, and yet he didn't continue the sentence. He left this white space. If you are continuing, then that, don't indent the word. Some people will bring that there to the, bring it inside. No. Paragraphing means space. Give double space so that the thing will go down. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
And the proper example is this one. So you can see that this one, he has entered. So there's a space between the previous and the now.
Right.
Next question. Our time is up. Salasi.
Doc, so I'd like to find out, is there a specific number of words or limit to what you can do to any, like all the chapters?
All the chapters, no. But all the document, there's a limit. All the chapters, no. All the document, there's a limit. So you will have to arrange, okay, your work in such a way that you have all the overall limit within the limit that I have been given. It differs from department to department, institution to institution. If you look at your manual, they would have told you exactly. Some are 12,000 words, some are 12 to 15,000 words, some are 15 to 20,000 words. If you read your document, do you know yours?
I saw something like 66 pages. I'm not so sure if I'm right.
Yeah, so you should convert that to words. Do you know about how many words are in a page?
No, say.
Oh, your friend who is listening is aware.
My friend, do you know?
You ask your friend about how many words are in
Say,
one page.
all of them in the group are my friend. They're all quiet. Solace, do you know?
Well, if you are spacing them, okay, suppose you are spacing the thing 1.5 or double, because the spacing depends. It depends on the spacing, okay? But mostly, if it is single space, we are talking about 500 to 600 words in the page, okay? In a page. So if you are doing you say 60, right?
66, yes.
So if it is 66, you multiply 66 by 500, and that will give you the idea. So you do 500 times 66, that is 30,000 words. Double check. I don't think it's probably that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. But if you are doing single spacing, that's what it is. So that is it. But again, your supervisor will guide you during, and then you have the research document that will guide you in that. Request for research document from Professor Wing. Any other question, please? So next time we meet, we are going to look deeper into the literature review, the deeper aspect of literature review itself, the context and the literature review. When it comes to the methodology, I'll handle that fully in the subsequent from week 7. How you will go step by step with your research methodology and the analysis, with your work when it comes to the quantitative part of it. If there's no question, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having all of you. I wish you all the very best. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and the week. And remember to drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. There shallow drought will intoxicate your brain, and drinking largely sobers us again. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.